Perfect. Everybody, welcome to episode number 33. If anybody had told me back in April of 2020 that we would still be doing these damn things into October of 2021, I would not have believed them, and I might have jumped out a window. That said, we are incredibly fortunate to have a really good treat tonight. We are going to be tonight interviewing and tasting. We are interviewing Koray from Paul John. He represents a company, I think it's a Park 325, correct? Or 325 Park?
375 Park Avenue.
375 Park. Sorry, I didn't mean to get the address wrong there. I met Koray in a private tasting, sort of like a focus group tasting, about 2 months ago with the Whisky Mavens, and it was a great event. And we really went through the Paul John lineup, and everything was delicious. We had a great time. A few things before we get started here. First, I want to point out that the box that you all received, okay, if you open up the lid of the box, the names of the whiskeys on the lid of the box do not match up with the whiskeys in the bottles, okay? That box, which by the way is absolutely beautiful. I love this box. The box says Brilliance, edited in bold. Those are 3 different Paul John expressions. Tonight we are going to be tasting 3 expressions: the classic, the Mithuna, and the Peated. Okay, so we're starting classic, then Mithuna, then Peated. Okay, and what I'd like us to do right now, Koray, if you could do us a favor, please, and tell us a little bit about you and your company. What brands do you represent?
Sure. Just thanks for the clarification about the box. So those boxes are safe to ship. That's why I use them. And yeah, thanks, Paul, for all the brands. I will just tell them one by one. But yes, those 3 whiskeys that's in the box, the written one, Brilliance, edited and bold, they're the flagships. They are, let's say, in a way, entry-level whiskeys. And the whiskeys that you received, classic and peated, they are in our select cask range, which are cask strength whiskeys. Then Mithuna, I'll come that later, is a limited edition whiskey, just to let you know. Well, thanks for the word. I'm Koray Ozdemir. I am the US Portfolio Ambassador for 375 Park Avenue Spirits. In a sentence, we import whiskeys, we distribute whiskeys, we spread the word of whiskeys, and a lot of other spirits, as what Paul showed on my card. And if you just take a look at the back of the card that I sent you in the box, what I have there is like around 34 different brands, but I mostly take care of the whiskeys, which are Paul John, Glenmorangie, Cadisac, JP Wiser's, Journeyman, Devil's River, and Misunderstood Whiskey. So these whiskeys, I work along their advocacy, education, but 50% of my time is devoted to Paul John. And just before this job, I used to be the Paul John West Coast brand ambassador for 2.5 years. So I'm one of those guys who know from top to bottom about the distillery. And yeah, it will be really much fun. Let me tell you that.
It sounds like a lot of whiskeys to be an expert in. It sounds like that's a lot of work. It's good work, but it sounds like it's a tough job.
Yeah, it's like different hats for different brands. I also manage the brand ambassadors for Glenmorangie. So we have 2 brand ambassadors in the US for Glenmorangie, Diana and Brandon. One of them is in Florida, one of them is in New York. So I manage their advocacy activations. JP Wiser's don't have a lot to do, honestly, because they have wonderful brand ambassadors in Canada. And then the other brands are quite new and small. So we are just exposing the brand to the public, and I'm doing whatever I can. So what I do is I travel the US, make people drink whiskey, in a sense.
That's not a bad job. So before we get started with the classic, can you tell us a little bit about just Indian whiskey in general, the market, and where Paul John fits into this?
So weird enough, I don't know if you know this yet, but India is the most whiskey consuming country of the world. It's around 1.5 billion liters. It's like 3 times the US. This is kind of normal because there are like 1.3 billion people in India, and if everybody drank a liter of whiskey, that will be enough. However, India also has 7 out of 10 best-selling whiskeys of the world. Not the last 7. The best-selling whiskey of the world is Indian. The top 5 is Indian. Number 6 is Johnny Walker. Number 7 is Jack Daniels, and number 8 is Jim Beam. And 9 and 10 is again Indian. So this is quite weird because we don't know those whiskeys. We never heard of best-selling Indian whiskeys. Number 1 whiskey is called McDowell's Number 1, which is quite rhyming, so it's awesome. However, these whiskeys are, mass productions. They are cheap. They're incredibly cheap. We are talking about $5 to $15. And one thing about these whiskeys, if we were to import these whiskeys as they were in the bottle in India, we couldn't call them whiskey. They are grain spirit mixed with molasses spirit, which we can technically call them the bastions rums. So weird enough, the best-selling whiskeys of the world, they are rums. That's interesting. But 25 years ago, like India has this culture for almost like 70 years now, distillation. However, 25 years ago, the first single malt brand, Amrut, came out. Then in 2009, Paul John laid the first whiskey into the barrels as the second brand. Then a third company called Rampur came out. Then Kamet came out. And now there's a fifth brand which is coming, which is called Indri. And so they're going to be changing the history. The reason for that is these brands, they're actually doing the job way better than other countries which started the whiskey. They are following the Scotch rules. They are using every quality control they can, and they are bringing the new ideas without cheating. So this actually brought the Indian single malt whiskey to another level.
All right, can I stop you for a second there?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to stop for a second. This is very interesting, but I actually want people to start drinking because I can tell everybody's getting a little antsy here. They're saying I haven't started yet. So what I want us to do right now is I'd like everybody to pour for themselves a little bit of the classic. Bear in mind, these are cask strength. Just keep that in mind. These are cask strength. And Koray, if you can do me a favor, we'll come back to the Indian whiskey market. I'd like you to tell us how you taste the whiskey.
Sure. This is like everybody will have their own style. I will just show you how I do it at whiskey competitions when I'm judging the whiskeys. So the first thing, most of the whiskey tasting is all about the smell. For me, it's like 70-75% is the smell. So the first thing will be smelling. However, this is 55.2% ABV, which is 110.4 proof. So be careful. Bring it to a comfortable level to your nose, but don't dig your nose in, especially if you are new into this. Just try to understand the flavors. And when you have some flavors like, honey, a little bit tropical fruits, stop there. That's the point where you can understand it. When you understand the notes, have a small sip. This is to clear your palate from all those fatty residue or any cigars or any cigarettes or food you had. Or another reason to drink whiskey. That's what I like. The second sip should be larger. Try to understand the flavors in your mouth. Try to chew it. Swirl it there. Take your time. Try to enjoy. Don't forget, this is 110.4 proof. It might be a little bit kicky. I can see Terry's face over there, which is lovely. That's what I like about Zoom. And this is what we call the palate. All the flavors in your mouth that you understand. And the last part is the finish, which is the feeling in your throat when the liquid is going down. It can be velvety. You might feel nothing. With this one, there is no possibility of that. You will feel some spices, a little bit of heat going down. And this is the absolute tasting we do at the competitions. What you can do, you can add water. Adding water is totally good for someone, especially in this whiskey. I love it because adding oxygen, which is in water, H2O, you add oxygen into water. So you change the character of the spirit by breaking the bonds of the chemicals and creating new chemicals. And this is done with oxygen. And when you add water, this is what you do. And also you dilute the whiskey a little bit.
How much do you add?
For classic, I generally add like 3-4 drops. Not much.
The legs on this are great.
A great one on that.
Yeah, the legs on this are amazing.
So the legs are always a showcase of high alcohol, rule of thumb, but at the same time, it might be a showcase of the wood too, time to time.
Okay. So you told us, so you mentioned the word before we tasted this, you were talking about the Indian whiskey market, and you mentioned the words, the keywords single malt. So can you please tell us a little bit about the barley that goes into this and the barrels, the production process?
So single malt, like, in definition, it's a type of whiskey that's made in a single distillery. So single refers to the distillery, in our case, Paul John Distillery. And malt means it's made with malted barley. So 100% of malt, nothing corn or rye or wheat gets into this. So malt has to be special for every distillery. In Scotland, in Europe, in Japan, they are mostly using European barley, which is harvested from Slovenia, Scotland, Germany, other parts of Europe. However, in our case, in Paul John Whiskey, we are sourcing our barley again from India. Paul John's motto is to source and make everything as much as from India. So let's put it this way. We source our barley from India, water from India, copper pot stills are handmade in India. We take our productions and everything until bottling in India. But the barley is more special because unlike the European barley, which is called 2-row barley, it's technically a barley with 2 kernels from the top. We are using 6-row barley. So 6-row barley has six kernels if you look from the top. What changes is 6-row barley has more proteins. And those proteins are actually the things that are giving that mouthfeel and the creamy texture in the liquid. If you taste another, let's say 55.2% ABV whiskey, it will be tasting very differently.
And what about the barrels?
So the barrels, we predominantly use American bourbon barrels. However, this has started to change, and we are going to see a little bit example of that. But we have barrels from Spain, right now Portuguese, US, France, and everything. But the first whiskey classic is made in, is aged in only first fill ex-bourbon barrels. And those ex-bourbon barrels are mostly coming from the Sazerac house. So Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, 1792, maybe even Peated.
And let's go back to the barley a little bit. I mean, India, obviously, a very large country, many different climate regions. Can you tell us a little bit about the Goa region and how is that represented in the whiskey?
Actually, for the ones who don't know India, let me show you this, if you don't mind. I will just share you my screen.
Of course.
So this is India, and that red point is where Goa is. So it's very much in the southwest. And this is the Goa, like this small state. When you zoom in, we are again in the southwest of Goa. So this is a small, very small industrial city called Kumkolim. And Kumkolim is interesting because, let me find that for you. It looks like this. So this is the shores of Goa. Where white beaches, incredible vacation place.
I like that. I don't know if everybody can see that on there. It says angel share 8 to 10%. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I'll be coming to that. So as this is our beach side, this is actually where we source our water from the mountainside, because just behind Kumkolim, it's actually mountains, and there's a river called River Sel coming down. So it's very interesting. And I was there in 2019. It's an incredible culture. Until 1964, Goa used to be a Portuguese colony. That's why still the main religion is Christianity. And 95% of the population is Catholic. And that's why we have a name like Paul John, because Paul John is the name of the owner, and they still name their kids after Catholic names.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I meant to ask you that, but I forgot to put that on my question list here. Yeah. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that name doesn't sound Indian at all.
Yeah. So what he's a real Indian guy. Actually, I can also show him to you. This is Mr. Paul John. Let's show them.
And the
this is the guy himself.
Okay, that's him.
Yeah,
great.
And
wonderful.
This is the second man behind the whiskey, Michael D'Souza, who is the master distiller, who has been there from day one at the distillery.
Very nice.
So
the barley. Does the barley also come from Goa?
No, barley is coming from the northern part of India, where we call Rajasthan. The main reason for that is Goa is a tropical place, so the barley quality is not that high. But in the northern part, we have a dry region called Rajasthan. And in Rajasthan, there's a cool climate too for some time of the year, so we can have a high quality barley. And if you look at the Indian single malt production, they mostly source their barley from that area. There are like 3-4 regions that you can get. We have an agency there, so we transport the barley only when we are going to make the whiskey.
Got it. By the way, I do have a question for you before we go on to the Mithuna. A lot of us noticed that the box smelled like whiskey. Was that done on purpose?
Maybe there was some leak.
No. They all smell a little bit. I wonder if maybe that had to do with some way to enhance the sensory experience, if that was done on purpose, because it smelled really good and there were no leaks.
I would love to say I sprayed each box for you, but I didn't do that. So there might be a very small leak. So that made everything.
That's fascinating. Well, you might want to think about doing that in the future because it smelled great.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was a scratch and sniff box.
Right. So I notice here with the next one, the Mithuna. Am I pronouncing that correct? Sure. Is it Mithuna? Is that correct?
Mithuna.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a very different color.
Yeah.
Here.
I will actually show it in the big bottle so you have an idea. Just to complete it. So Paul, the classic has been aged for 8 years in our underground cellars. Okay.
Oh, so that's how you avoid the angel share by doing it underground?
Yes. So we have two different cellars. One style above the ground level, which we call subterranean, and one underground level, which we call the underground cellar. So subterranean one over the ground level is just like an American rickhouse. We have 13 racks high, incredibly deep. Every warehouse I think has like 6,500 barrels. We have 3 of them. So the angel share there is 8 to 10%. And the reason for that is 90-95 degrees of temperature throughout the year, which is a problem, and 7 to 75% of relevant humidity. So when they combine together, we have an angel share of 8 to 10%. If you don't know the amounts, in Scotland, this is 1 to 3. In Kentucky, this is 2 to 8. In Taiwan, it's worse. It's like 10 to 14%. But the more angel share you have, the faster you will have a drinkable whiskey. That's why 8 years of classic is tasting quite awesome. And technically, the oak extraction level in India is like 3 times more than Scotland.
Can you repeat that? I want to make sure I heard that again. Say that again, please.
The oak extraction level, if you look at phenols or tannins coming from the oak to the whiskey, is three times more than Scotland. So that's why 1 year in India can be considered like 3 to 4 years in Scotland. However, there are different aspects. Yeah.
Okay. In the rick house, one thing that we've learned from other people is that in different parts of the world, when you have big temperature swings, it can have an effect of the whiskey going into the wood and out of the wood. So when in your rick house, that's the one that's above ground, do you have a consistent temperature there, or do you have wide temperature swings?
We don't have a temperature control system. It's all natural, and there's a temperature difference like around 10 to 15 degrees from top to bottom of the rick house. But the main thing is also there are storms there, storm seasons in Goa. So humidity increases and decreases. The temperature difference is not that huge, but the humidity actually increases and decreases a lot. But to prevent that a little bit, again, naturally, we are using our underground cellars. So it doesn't make us, to prevent the angel share a lot. Instead of 8 to 10%, we have 7 to 8%, let's say. And that's where we age all of our precious barrels, and like classic, peated or Mithuna. So all of the whiskeys for today are coming from the underground cellar.
Okay. And the Mithuna, okay, obviously has a very different color. Wow, look at those bottles. Wow. So, I mean, we can even tell that from the small bottles here. So clearly there's a difference in how these things have been aged. Do these have the same barley in them? Same grain?
Same barley, same production method until aging.
Okay.
The biggest difference of Mithuna is the oak tree. Everybody thinks that, okay, let's smell together. Let's see. Okay. I wanna hear what you think.
That's right. Oh, it's rich.
All right. This is 58%, 116 proof, FYI.
Oh, a lot of cinnamon. Mhm. Somebody
Yeah,
here
what do you-
posted, somebody says dates. Somebody
Dates
saying
on the
red,
nose.
yeah, red wine.
wine.
By the way, Eric can copy for you the all the notes and send them to you later. You'll just have to like edit out all these comments that half of them are
No.
completely irrelevant, but you know, but they're still fun. Wow, how is this thing aged?
Okay, so when it looks, the color is all natural, by the way. When people see this color, a little bit dark, a little bit, mahogany, they always think about like there's some sherry influence in it, but there is not even one piece of sherry oak in this one. It's all, again, American oak. It spends its first 4 years in American virgin oak, just like a good bourbon. And it's finished in ex-bourbon barrels for 2 years. So the color actually comes.
No wine,
sherry.
No sherry
wine,
cast, no
sherry.
port cast,
Yep.
nothing.
Nope, nothing.
Wow.
So it's all coming from the virgin oak itself. Just think of a well-aged bourbon. Like, let's say, just think of like Sazerac 17, kind of, or George T. Steck, and I'm sorry, whoever likes George Steck. It was the discussion of today. So just think about a well-aged bourbon. That's the same logic. American virgin oak actually gives a lot of color with the climate and humidity in India. In 2019, I had the chance of tasting the 4-year-old virgin oak, and what I remember is like, this is too hot and spicy. I like it, but not a lot of people can actually consume it lovingly. So that, I think Michael was also thinking the same. So he actually trimmed the edges with the American ex-bourbon barrels for 2 years. And for those barrels are the second fill barrels. And if you know your barrels, the first fill has more impact, second fill has less impact on the flavor, and the third fill has less impact. That's why we wanted to have a delicate finish on it. And after 4 years of virgin oak, we get 2 years of second fill ex-bourbon barrels. And other story of this whiskey, which is quite funny. Last year in September, I was working out in the morning, like it was like 8:30 a.m. I guess. And my phone started to ring and everybody was texting me like saying like, congrats, well done, man. I was like, what the hell? It's not December. It's not my birthday yet. And I asked someone like, what's happening? And they told me like, your whiskey was selected as the 3rd best whiskey of the world. I was like, what the hell? Which one? Mituna. I was like, we didn't bottle it yet. And yes, Mituna was selected as the 3rd best whiskey of the world just before bottling. And we bottled this whiskey early in 2021, sorry. And we got the whiskey in India, in US around April, if I'm not wrong. And we have been selling it. There's only 6,000 bottles of what you're drinking in the world, only 3,000 bottles in the US. Well, but like 50%, I managed to bring in 50% of the bottles, so luckily.
Is this available in, it's available in Chicago?
Yes.
I know Binny's has it, right?
Yes, Binny's has it. And the First Whiskey Classic is in our core range. It's there, it's available. I think it's around $100. Mituna should be around $300.
Yeah, and actually, I wanted to mention everybody that Mituna, I believe, you're going to get an unofficial award here, Koray, because I'm fairly certain that of all the bottles that have been provided to us over the last year and a half, I think that this is the most expensive one. So thank you for your generosity of providing us with 2-ounce samples of, such a rare and delicious whiskey.
Whiskey is for sharing. That's
absolutely
the only thing I see.
Okay.
Andy
so,
has a question.
Name. Yeah, the name. Great question, Andy. Great question.
That's my bad. So we, Paul John, we have a Zodiac series, and this is the 2nd bottle in Zodiac series. The first bottle was called Kanya, and Kanya was the Indian counterpart of Virgo. And the name came from like Virgo. Why did we name it as Virgo? Because Kanya was incredibly delicate, a little bit light, soft whiskey aged for 7 years in ex-bourbon barrels. So that was a great whiskey. It was at 100 proof, but that was like going like water. So we named this as Virgo because Virgo people are clean cut, they are neat, they are soft, they have soft feelings, and they're emotional. And the 2nd bottle was actually going to be named something else. It was going to be named as Tula in the 4th year. Then Tula is the Indian counterpart of Taurus. However, we changed that to Mituna, and Mituna is the Indian counterpart of Gemini. The reason we did that was After aging it for 4 years in virgin oak, the whiskey starts to change character in every 10 minutes. Just imagine, like, if you drink it more, if you keep it in your glass more, that's what I'm trying to spend some time, so you can actually get the aromas. The first flavors are like, for me, it was like white Armagnac. This, after 10 minutes, it's like rye whiskey because of the cardamoms and cloves. And as the time goes, you will feel tropical fruits, which is a significant flavor coming from an Indian single malt. That's why we wanted to call this Mituna, because, you know, Geminis, they're double-faced. They can be cute and evil at the same time. We wanted to showcase that on the bottle. And if you take a look at the main bottle, we have the Gemini sign, and as well as great drum here.
That's beautiful.
And I don't know what's the third bottle is going to be. I'm looking to have Sagittarius as soon as possible.
So Mituna has been produced. This is the second version of Mituna?
So yeah, Mituna is the second bottle in the Zodiac range. And there will be 12 bottles in I don't know how many years. We'll see.
Fascinating. And so each one's going to be aged a little bit differently, I presume.
So aged differently, different oaks will be used. And I can assure you that right now we have. So when we first produced Kanya, the first bottle, we actually only had ex-bourbon barrels in general. Mituna, we have now virgin oak is a new thing for us. We started using virgin oak with the Christmas edition 2020. And probably next edition can be another thing, because now we have PX Oloroso wine barrels, Portuguese barrels. So you might expect something different.
Got it. But the stuff that we're drinking tonight, nothing has been from a wine barrel.
No wine barrels at all.
Got it. Interesting. So, let's go on to the peated. Okay, let's go on to the peated. So, I do not believe that peat is something that you find naturally in India. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. So we have to import two things for our whiskey. One, as I told you, it's all barrels because there's no oak trees in India, and we have to import from France, from Spain, from Portugal, from US predominantly. And the second thing is the peat, because there's not any usable peat box in India for whiskey. There's been a study on it, but there's not anything usable. That's why we are importing the peat in winter months to keep the humidity. So we are importing it as the earth itself. We are putting them in plastic wraps, importing them from Islay and Highland, Scotland. So two different peat styles are coming to northern India to our malting agency. And we are just peat smoking our whiskey there in the winter months. So we only have a peated production in the winter months in India.
Okay, I want to stop you there for a second. I want to make sure everybody heard that, because we've spoken to people at different distilleries from places that don't have natural peat, and some of them are importing to their distilleries peated barley already. Barley that was peated, Highland, sometimes from Inverness, they're importing for themselves peated Highland barley. And you're actually bringing peat from Scotland to Goa, and you're using it in Goa, and you're actually smoking the barley there yourselves.
Yep. Everything happens in India, from malting to bottling.
Wow. Have you been there when they've been doing that, by the way?
To malting process, no. I was there for distillation, fermentation, distillation, and bottling process. And of course, when you're there, aging also happens naturally.
One thing I like about this is that, all of your expressions, they're all using the same barley. So you're controlling that aspect of your production.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's all the same barley, and you're just doing different things to it instead of bringing in barley from other places.
So Jonathan asked that, is it hard to import the peat? No issues. It is hard, and it's expensive. It's also expensive to use only Indian peat, because the yield for 6-row Indian barley is lower than the European barley. So everything about what we do is quite expensive, but we want to bring purely Indian single malt whiskey to the market. That's why we are doing it. Other brands like Amrut and Rampur, they are also using European barley. Right, it's their choice. I'm going to add one thing on that. How does the climate in Goa affect the peating process? Speed it up, slow it down. Currently, so peating process is done in northern India, not in Goa, because we do the malting there. So it's a process. It's a part of malting process. So everything is done there, and we have the peated barley at the end to Goa. So no, it's not a problem for us. What I would say is when you open the boxes, the Brilliance, Edited, and Bold, they're actually a wonderful showcase of what Gil just said right now. It's like the same barley style. Both 3 of the whiskeys, they are all same age, same ABV, same process. What different is their peat level. So the first whiskey, Brilliance, has no peat. The second whiskey, Edited, is mildly peated, and the third whiskey, Bold, is heavily peated. So that's a wonderful showcase.
Right, and those are the core range, right? Those are the core range that we don't have here tonight.
Yes,
okay.
But it's a wonderful showcase of peat progression if you want to try.
Right, and I do have some samples of those partially consumed from that prior tasting that you and I had. So when you are tasting a peated whiskey, is there anything that you do differently, anything that you're looking for?
I just pour it in my glass, sniff it once, then leave it for a couple minutes to open it up, because peat can be aggressive, especially if the bottle is just opened. So I want to give it some time. Like my bottle is this much, so it should be all right at this moment. So I can just pour it and drink. But if it's new, there might be an aggressive peaty feeling. But I do believe that peat has different nuances. So that's why we are bringing peat from 2 different regions. So if you're familiar with Scotch whiskey, you will know that Islay whiskies like Lafroy, Ardbeg, or Lagavulin has different profiles. Or if you go to Highlands, let's say if you had peated whiskies from Ardmore or Glenfiddich or Balvenie, you will feel a different process. That's mostly the peat differentiation. So Highland peat is a little bit sweet, smoky. It's a little bit barbecue smoke. It has a lot of materials that's called creosote in it, and creosote makes it more barbecue smoke and sweet smoke. When you go to Islay, you will feel medicinal, earthy profile, and this is all coming from the nature itself, because in a Highland we have a lot of vegetation, a lot of human impact, a lot of rainfall. Underground waters are incredibly clean and pure. But when you go to Islay, it's an island, it's a small island. It's enclosed by ocean waters, salty waters. The vegetation is not high, it's mostly heather. The human impact is low. There is a lot of stormy weather, and underground waters are a little bit briny and salty. And that's also in the earth, which is in the peat itself. So when you use the 2 different peats, you will get 2 different characters. This one, peated, has mostly Highland peat and some Islay peat in it.
Are they peated? Are you using both peats at the same time, or are you peating some of the barley with the Highland and some of the barley with the Islay peat?
Yes, we are doing it separately and blending it together.
Got it. And how long are you exposing the barley to the smoke?
It changes from, so we don't have a definite ppm. I wrote 35 over there, but it's like 30 to 35, or for edited, like our lightly peated whiskey or Christmas editions, that's like 5 to 10. So it might vary from 1 hour 30 minutes to even 6 hours. So it's something that Michael decides, actually. Whatever he wants, he can do. But the maximum ppm level we got until today was 35, just to give you that. And yeah.
Are you ever trying to get anything higher, or is this like the level that you're happy with at this time?
Yeah, we are happy with this. Actually, Mr. Paul John doesn't like peat at all.
Now, do you add water to the peated cask strength whiskeys, or do you drink it as is?
I don't necessarily add water to this one. I just do as it is. This one, I find it really pleasable. It doesn't feel like 111 proof to me, and it makes a killer highball, by the way. If anybody likes highballs here, if you like peated highballs, it's incredible. I don't know if you know those private jet planes that you can actually buy tickets, like 25 people in the plane. There's one here, and I use them between San Francisco and LA. It's bring your own bottle, so you can actually give your bottle and they can pour it for you. So one day I entered the plane, I gave the bottle, and I asked for a club soda, my whiskey, and ice. So highball it is. I poured it myself. I'm not exaggerating. 25 people, they were intrigued. I think we drank the bottle like 12 people in 47 minutes making highballs.
You were probably very popular.
Oh yeah, I was. That trip was awesome. But yeah, like this whiskey is actually our heavily peated whiskey. So this is probably the most peated whiskeys that you will find from Paul John for now. And it feels incredible. It feels a lot of sweet smoke, barbecue smoke. Then at the very back, you will feel some ashy profile coming from that Isla peat. If you are more of an Isla fan, I would definitely go and search for the Bold, because Bold is made with 100% Isla peat, and that's an incredible one.
Yeah, the one he was just talking about. So the name of that's Paul John Bold. It's actually, the word is bold, and that I think that's on the box. Is that one of the ones that's in the box here?
Yes, the
top
third
of the box. Right, and most of these are available at Binny's on occasion. And the Bold really does have. I mean, it is more smoky. Now, it's not cask strength, but it has more smoke to it, and it's it's absolutely delicious. Tell us about how this one is aged. We haven't talked about that yet.
Which one?
The peated. Okay, the peated one. How is the
oh yeah, it's the same
that we all just tasted.
It's actually the same with Chris. Classic. It's 8 years in the underground warehouse. It's first fill ex bourbon barrel, so everything is the same aside from the peat.
Okay.
And a little bit from the ABA.
Okay, so is that underground aging process in India, is that unique to Paul John? Because we hear so much about the Angel share. Until this conversation, I didn't really realize that was going to be such a big deal with respect to your particular brand.
Yeah, it's only special to Paul John right now. I don't know if anybody's hiding anything else, but we probably say it out loud. What we do is, from the over the ground warehouses, we do other whiskeys. Like we have a whiskey called Nirvana, which is just coming from the whiskeys up top there, and Brilliance Edited Bold. They are mostly made with whiskeys aging in the over the ground warehouse. However, we also balance them sometimes with the underground aged whiskey. So that gives us a huge advantage.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we don't see actual age statements on the bottles.
You won't see any age statements in Paul John, thanks to the aging over there. We don't think that the age actually resembles the quality in our whiskey, because like this whiskey is only 6 years old, Mituna. Meanwhile, Classic is 8 years old, so that's not relevant.
Right.
And
that
won't be relevant. Yeah, right. That won't be relevant in any country like Taiwan or India. I'll say that. So we don't think. Yeah, but every time if you ask us to, age, or if you come to our tastings, we openly tell the ages and everything.
Got it. Eric, do you have any particular questions for Koray before we open it up to questions from the group? And everybody, if you can start doing the raise hands thing so we can start getting you in the queue.
So one question, are you guys doing anything special with your yeast, or are you just using
no,
regular?
It's the M1 yeast, distiller's yeast, so it's a typical usual yeast.
Do you have any plans to do anything experimental with?
I asked this to Michael twice and he doesn't have it. He's still playing with the barrels, so I think that's another level.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Let's see. I don't see any hands up, but I know that Ariel Eisenberg did have a question. Remember, you can all use that raise hands function under reactions, right?
I used raised hand. My hand's raised.
Yes, Paul is the only one who's officially raising his hand.
Oh, so we're going to do Paul first.
I followed directions very well.
Nice.
Oh, crap. Sorry for this interlude. Now that I'm sufficiently distracted. So when making like the heads and tails cuts, is everything distilled pretty much the same? Or do you have different heads and tails cuts for the different, barleys or the different styles that you end up trying to do?
Yeah, everything is pretty much the same. It's usual Scottish style. Nothing changed that much. We don't have anything experimental in the spot, but we don't also have this, it's 2 hours 21 minutes, so we should cut it right now. No, nothing like that. It's mostly done with learning. So over the years, our team learned a lot. We have 6 distillers at the premises, so they learned everything, and they're discussing with Michael. And we have one thing which is special. We have our spirit safe open. We don't have to close it. So our distillers can go and taste it at any time. And if you go to the distillery, you can also taste it yourself. And that's mostly done in a sensual way. However, of course, everybody has their, timeline.
Great. Eric, who was next?
I guess I'll be nice. I was going to call Susan just to piss off Ariel, but we'll do Ariel next.
So I don't have my brother here to ask me about barrels. We've already covered that today with the cooperage. But I'd love to hear more about the types of stills that you're using. You were saying that your man produces them himself, or they're produced in India?
So we were searching for stills. At the end of the day, we wanted to create our own copper pot stills. And to do this, you can either go and ask Forsyth to make one in Scotland. But you know, we also have good copper workers in India. So we actually had our own design. So Mr. Paul John is he really likes Glenmorangie, so he wanted to have something tall, but not that tall. But the line arm should be like that. So that's one thing he wanted. But they wanted an pear-shaped still. But one thing, let me find a photo. I don't know why I don't have it here. So I can help tell you easier. All right, this is it.
I just love those shelves behind you, Koray. I love those displays. That whiskey shelf is just amazing. You probably don't have any cats, right?
I have two.
You have two cats and they don't knock over the bottles?
They're okay. They're good. So what you see is the first one, the big, this one, it's our wash still, which is weird because normally we don't have this reflux bowl in the wash still. And the reason we have it in the reflux bowl in the wash still is to increase the copper tension area, to have a little bit lighter profile at the beginning. So if you see, we have the reflux bowl here, which creates a lighter spirit. And then we have the line arm going top. It's like 107 degrees over here. So what this makes it, when your liquid evaporates and hits this line arm, it tries to condensate. It tries to go up and up, but most of the time it just falls back into the still and redistills. So it actually makes your whiskey lighter and purer. And this is our spirit still, which is not slightly, it's actually really small in a big margin. And we don't have the reflux bowl here, but since the size is smaller, we actually have a larger copper tension area. It goes up again, and this is again going upwards. So it increases the reflux and it increases the amount of pure spirit we have to condensation. So these are actually our copper pot stills, which makes the spirit really interesting and light and delicate.
Got it. Ariel, does that answer your question? Excellent. Susan, you've been patient while we pushed you back in line.
It's all good. It's whiskey. There's no reason to be sad. So you were talking about peat earlier being from Islay and from Highland. Do you know where in the Highlands?
Highland is the same for every brand that's using Highland peat. That's the same. It's Aberdeenshire. Balvenie uses the same. We use the same. Even Port Charlotte, they're using Highland peat from Aberdeenshire, by the way. If any one of you are Port Charlotte fans, I'm sorry to say that. Sometimes it's not Islay peat.
Susan, you were there, right?
Oh, yeah. In Islay, yes. It was fantastic.
The Islay one, I cannot tell you in words, but I can tell you this way, one of the reviving distilleries.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm just curious, Bloom and Nolan, you frequently have good questions. I'm curious if you have any particular questions for Koray. I've got a few others, but you guys usually have some good questions. Either one?
Well, I was going to say the stills look fairly large. What are you, how often are you running? Are you running every day of the week, or are you running 24 hours? And then how much alcohol are you producing a year?
It's going continuously, 24/7. Let me put. That's why we have 6 distillers throughout the event. The wash still is 12,000 liters, if I'm not wrong. We do not fulfill it. We only fill like 8,000 to 9,000 liters of it, and the spirit still is 9,000 liters, and we again don't fill it to the top. So we are trying to, that's how you how we also find the best taste from our whiskey. The total production level has increased, so I don't have the exact numbers because we increased it last year, but I will learn and get back to you about that. But it used to be 200,000 liters, and it increased. I think we are close to a big number right now. Let me get back to you. I don't want to say anything wrong about that.
I like that you're careful with how with what you're saying here. Now, you don't need to be careful with us, although it is being recorded. I do have to mention that Eric is very good at going back and taking things out if we need to do so. So feel free to you know, at any point in time say, Eric, we need to remove that.
Oh, please don't. I
No,
don't want to do the work.
Yeah, I know. It takes you time. I know it takes you time.
I'm just trying to make Eric's work lighter. So.
Thank you.
Bloom, do you have any questions?
Sure. Michael asked the volume question, which I'm glad you asked, Michael. The question I had was more one about experimentation. You talked to us about your series that led to the Mithuna. I'm just wondering if Paul John is doing a lot of different experimentation, and if you've ever done anything with other grains or things beyond the barrel finishing, which I think we've already touched.
We don't have any barrel finishing yet, I can tell you. Sorry, we don't have any different grains yet, but we have grapes. So we did something different. So I passed this point, but we are one of those best whiskey producers, like the high volume whiskey producers in the world. We have another whiskey under John Distilleries called Original Choice, which is the 5th best-selling whiskey of the world. And aside from those, we also make local rums, brandies, gins, vodkas, other spirits that actually keeps the lights on for Paul John whiskey. And one of those things is the roulette brandy. And we have been doing that for a while, but we also wanted to do premium brandy. And we actually just brought to the US a brandy called Exo. If you can give me a second, I will actually bring you the bottle. There we go. This is our Exo Brandy. It's made with 100%.
That's a beautiful bottle.
Yeah.
That bottle is beautiful.
It's actually embossed peacock here. So awesome.
Wow.
So it's made with grapes that are harvested from India. So what we did was we imported Uni Blanc wines from France. We sold it in India. We harvested it in India. And we are also using a local grape called Bangalore Purple. And we are making the wine and distilling the wine in our whiskey stills. So that's what we do differently. And
Bangalore Purple is a great name.
And we aged this whiskey, this brandy in French Limousin oaks for 8 to 10 years. And this is also in the US, fantastic one.
How much does a bottle of that go for?
I think 140, 150, something there.
Got it. Okay, so we have Andy Montgomery and then Jonathan. Andy, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yep, thanks. So I was wondering, how does the wide range of humidity in the region affect how you make this whiskey? Because again, if you get it like in the monsoon season when the rains are coming versus when it's incredibly dry, I'm just wondering what impact that has.
So there's nothing like there's not a rotation system or anything we use. We just learned everything by experimenting it, living it. Just think that the first whiskey we tried from Paul John is 2012. And I actually tried my first Paul John in 2014 with Peated. Peated was the first Paul John I tried back in Turkey, Istanbul, and it was nothing like this. So we learn everything as we live. And I think Michael also saw what happens through the monsoon season because he has barrels that he's looking at. He has older barrels that he's been looking at how it behaves like we don't have anything in the market other more than 8 years old, but there are like 9 to 10-year-old whiskeys at the distillery when I was there and I tasted them and they're honestly over oaked. So he can actually see that. And then he actually started working on the second fill ex-bourbon barrels, which might have a longer maturation life, maybe 10 years. So we can see that. But what he saw throughout the years is that, yep, different seasons behave differently in India. That's why we are doing the peated whiskey only in winter, not in summer, because then the barley quality changes. Then there's the humidity aspect, and it's India and everybody is into humidity. I think they know it better than us how it's going to behave on their spirits.
Got it. Great. So, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks for the taste. I enjoyed it. It sounds like a massive operation. Do you have stills that are dedicated just to whiskey, and then others to the like the other spirits, and like with grape?
We only use Paul John Distillery for whiskey making and the brandy making, nothing else. The other operation is happening in Bangalore. We have another distillery there under the name of John Distilleries. They are doing everything there. It's a very industrial facility, I can tell you that.
Got it. Jonathan, do you have a follow-up question, or did he answer your question to your satisfaction?
Oh, yeah, good, thank you.
Okay, great. Back to the man from Naperville.
So I wanted to ask you, especially since you're importing the peat itself and not peated barley, how is that working with logistics and COVID protocol? I know there's all sorts of restrictions on shipping right now. How are you guys getting the peat from Scotland?
I have no idea how it's happening right now about the peat, but before COVID, I can tell you, we take like anyone can actually import the peat. It's not a big process. It's actually easier for us than importing barrels, because there are like certain tests in India for barrels that we have to pass. But for peat, there's not, and you can actually buy the peat in bulk, because it's also a fertilizer when you think that.
Yeah.
And the only thing we have to do with peat is to be fast, because we don't want to lose the humidity.
Right. Yeah. You don't want it to dry out. Right. You're right. You need it to be moist. Right.
So that has to be really performed in a good way, handled in a good way. That might be the biggest problem in COVID times, because there is no ships. You cannot find containers. You cannot find trucks or trains. Even in this US, like we are getting our whiskeys at least 2 months late right now. I think that should be a challenge.
You wouldn't want your peat stuck on a ship for an additional 2 months waiting to get into port.
Well, I haven't asked about that, and probably I'm not going to ask about that.
I mean, but Ariel, that's a great question, because we're hearing that from everybody. I mean, we're hearing that from everybody, that this is a big
supply
deal.
line is an issue with everything.
Yeah, actually,
sorry, Gil, we are really lucky, because during the COVID, I actually made the company to ship everything out to here. So aside from the new whiskeys like Christmas Edition 2021, which came to the US last Friday, so we are okay with that too. We actually have stock of everything in the US with Paul Jones, so we should be good for a year or two, even if nothing comes.
Oh, that's great. That's good that you planned for that. But that was a great question, Ariel. Really, because that's something that's on the mind of everybody who does any type of shipping nowadays. So that's a huge question. Actually, Koray, I do have another question for you. In what markets of the world is Paul John available?
If I'm not wrong, we are in 39 markets right now. Our biggest markets are...
Yeah, what are the biggest markets for
you? UK, France, Sweden, US, of course. Then there are some weird markets like South Africa. Then we are pretty good in Scotland too. And I just opened the Turkish market last year. And it's going pretty good. Like,
are there any issues? Are there any issues in Turkey with the prohibition on alcohol? With certain populations there?
The biggest problem with Turkey and alcohol is the prices, because the government is taxing a lot back. For every bottle, you're actually buying another bottle to the government.
Wow.
It's the same with cars. When you buy a car, you actually buy another car to the government.
Does anybody in Turkey make whiskey?
Good question. We actually used to make whiskey until 2000. So in 2000, they stopped production. The government didn't actually support it. But in 2002, the government changed. The new government came, and they decided to sell the government distillery, make it private, and they sold it to Diageo. And Diageo didn't think that it's going to make money in the future. What a wonderful, forecast, right? And they actually decided to cease the production and sell the stills. And weird enough, this is going to be lovely. And a distillery came out and they were looking for copper pulse stills. They called 4 sites in Scotland. They asked for stills and they were like, we cannot give you anything in 5 years. But there's this distillery in Turkey. They're going to sell their stuff. Would you like to buy it? And they checked the stills and everything and they decided to buy it. And they brought the stills. They actually constructed a distillery over those stills. And they started selling their first whiskey coming out of those stills last year, and they produced something this year. And the name of this distillery is our cute Virginia distillery.
Say that again.
Virginia distillery.
Okay, and that is located where exactly?
Virginia. I don't remember the city. Let me check that out for you.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Lowingston, Virginia. Never go there.
Wow.
And honestly, so they have 4 different whiskeys now. The first one was a blend of 3 different barrel style. And that was the first whiskey. Then they released their bourbon oak, sherry oak, and Koray oak, which is wine oak, this year. And I think that the Koray is probably the best American single malt I have ever tasted.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. That's one heck of a statement, and especially now that American single malt now is actually going to have standards. I love
that. I strongly support that.
Yeah, standards are a good thing. So one last question before we before we turn off the recording here. So let's talk about COVID. Okay, your life during COVID as a distributor. Okay, how has your life changed? And do you see anything opening up? Have you been able to schedule in-person events, or are you and your company still going all virtual? I mean, how are things going for you guys?
So when the COVID hit, actually, it was just a short shock for me. I decided to pivot. Like the first month, I was like, okay, what are we gonna do? Then the second month, I decided to do all my tasting virtually. So I think I was one of the first brand ambassadors to hold a virtual tasting. And I'm a tech-savvy person, so I told the company, like, we're gonna do everything there. I just need you guys to send me 50 mLs, like the ones you have. So those are actually a result of COVID, because we didn't have them in the US. We asked for them and we brought them here. So that was the first thing we did. Then, everything started to get virtual. So we decided to make launches. Like we launched Christmas edition virtually. We launched Mituna virtually, all the new whiskeys. So I'm really used to this game. If you see my table right now, if there was a mirror here, you would see a broadcast station. Like I got my microphone here, I got lights and a really good camera out there. But that was the first thing that changed for us. But the second thing was, okay, this cannot go forever. And in 2021, I moved from Paul John to 375 Park Avenue, but I'm still doing everything I did for Paul John. And we decided to do the event. So I'm managing the events for my company right now. And the first festival I did was Whiskey and Barrel Night, I guess, in New York. No, I didn't do that, but my company did that. Oh, we did the Bar Convent Brooklyn, which was a huge trade event in Brooklyn. And there we saw what's going to happen. Then I did the Whiskeys of the World. I was in Denver last week doing the Whiskey X, and I'm actually going to Vegas. And late in October, I will be in Florida, Hollywood, Florida, for the Whiskey Fest. So we started to do that. But the main concern of what we want is everybody vaccinated? That's the first rule that we are looking at. The second one is the honor code. Everyone can get a breakthrough case. They might know it, they might not know it. If they know it, we hope them not to come to the event. But that's something we cannot actually prevent. That's gonna be so we have to protect ourselves, which is sometimes happening, which is sometimes not. So we are on a thin line, I would say. But the first thing we are looking at,
every company is doing it differently. I know you probably know Monique Houston from Winebow. Her company is not allowing her to do indoor events. So a few weeks ago, we had Barrel and Bottle Night, Dave Sweet's Barrel and Bottle Night here in Chicago, and she wasn't able to come to that. But the next night, she was able to come to an event at our synagogue where it was an outdoor event. Okay, and that was great. You know, it's like, so her company won't let her do indoor events, but they'll let her do outdoor events.
No, that does fit. Like, I don't like my only rule is like everyone should be vaccinated, because indoor or outdoor there's going to be a matter. And matter of the fact, I'll be in Chicago for the Whiskey Fest on November 5th, if I'm not wrong. Right. I'll probably come a little bit earlier or stay a little bit longer. So, you know.
Well, the night before Whiskey Fest. So, I want to give everybody just a little unofficial update about a World of Whiskeys, which is usually the night before Whiskey Fest. So they still are not, from what I've heard and from Brett, they still have not decided whether or not they're going to be holding World of Whiskeys. And if they do hold World of Whiskeys, it will probably be scaled down, and it will probably be invitation only. And in that case, Brett told me that he'll be giving me, you know, a bunch of invitation slots. We'll have to see how that works and how many will be there, you know, what the options will be for that. So we'll believe me, we'll be posting about that as it comes. And Koray, if you're in Chicago that week, hopefully a lot of us will be in Chicago too. And we hope to run into you at the very least, maybe at Delilah's, you know, late one night.
I'll be letting you know. It will be my first whole day in Chicago. I have only been there for 8 hours. So yes, I'll possibly be there for 2-3 nights.
Got it. Well, we can definitely help you get to the right places if that's necessary, and show you around. So what I'd like to do right now, you know, the way we like to end these events, everybody, if you are so inclined, please pour yourself another jam. I am actually going to be finishing my bottle of the Peated. Remember, don't worry, everybody, I didn't finish 2 ounces of Peated tonight. I had a bottle of Peated from before. Everybody, if you can please unmute yourselves. Remember, Eric and I cannot unmute you. You can please unmute yourselves. And please, everybody, join me in saying thank you and cheers to our very generous guest tonight, Koray Ozdemir. Koray, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
This was wonderful. Koray, do you have any last words for us before we turn off the
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We should do this often. More often.
You know, I gotta tell you, this has been COVID has definitely changed many of our lives, and with respect to this group, it's absolutely given us an opportunity to enhance relationships and get to know many more people like you, really on a more one-to-one basis than we would have had an opportunity to do otherwise. And we really appreciate your generosity. And once again, everybody, please say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.